And how do you end up working there?
I began teaching in Qatar in 2008, and I've been in Qatar a total of 17 years by the end of this year. Now, what happened was I was teaching in Shanghai for 3 years, and I was looking to leave my position to get another position in another part of China. At that time, I was thinking of Sichuan. However, a few schools outside China contacted me to consider a position in their respective schools. Now, Qatar was one of them, and at that time, I had no idea where Qatar was. I remember the head of secondary who was interviewing me, telling me that the capital city of Doha is about an hour's flight away from Dubai. Yeah, even up to today, I think lots of people get confused between Doha and Dubai, but I am in Doha, which is the capital of Qatar. To be honest with you, I wasn't particularly interested in that job at that time, mainly because the place was unfamiliar to me. And of course, it being in that region, where we all know it as quite an, unrestful region in general, it was a bit scary, the thought of moving there. But anyway, as you know now, the rest is history. I accepted the offer, as you know. Because of all the schools that were offering me the package, Qatar had the best, at that time.
I understand that you became a very successful teacher and you got several awards. Would you mind to tell us what were the awards and what are the secrets of your success as a teacher?
Yeah, I wouldn't really call them awards, but definitely recognitions, like throughout my life. I suppose if I want to be very honest, my first award, if you like, was, I was awarded the Malaysian Teaching Scholarship by the federal government, back in 1990. It was a long time ago. But this was definitely a gift from God because it came out of nowhere. Through this scholarship, it allowed me to move to England, and where I spent 6 years of my life, following the matriculation course and eventually earning my first degree, in the UK. But I suppose the point is, the reason why I got that award in the first place was my command of English was excellent. Yeah, but until I got the award, I wouldn't have known that I could get something like that. Yeah, so it was definitely a gift that was dropped down from heaven for me. And of course, subsequently, I've been to a few places to teach. Right, the question of what makes me an outstanding teacher, every school you go to, every bosses that you have, or every department that you work in actually have their own goals, right, and mission and values. So I would say that how do you make yourself an outstanding teacher? You need to align yourself with the goals and mission statements of the departments that you're working with, and then using that as your guideline, you try to demonstrate this in your teaching and in your interaction with your bosses and your students. Of course, I'm talking about students because I'm a teacher, right? The other thing is, as a teacher, I think to be outstanding, you need to keep very current. That means you need to read, you need to research, you have to keep up with the times. Young people, especially when you are dealing with young people, principles don't stay. Let me rephrase that. Young people's interest, evolves with time, So I come from a very different generation to a lot of my students. And I think that part of the successful lesson observations I used to have where I would get outstanding, would be because I tried to tailor all my lessons and planning to the interest and motivation of the children that I'm teaching. Yeah, of course, aligning it with sound teaching principles and methods. Yeah, but again, I guess in short, never stop studying. Even if you're working, you have to keep studying, because you've got to equip yourself for our world, which is always changing, constantly changing.
Do you get some awards in Doha?
I don't really have an award, but I mean, when I say I get, like sorry, you might have to stop that.
Say again, don't worry. Just continue.
Yeah, I didn't really get an award per se, but we are, when you are, when we have our what we call performance management, you are given your ratings. Yeah, so the best would be outstanding. Yeah, outstanding doesn't mean that you owe someone money. In this sense, outstanding means excellent. Yeah, so I guess that was my award, and as I said to you, I think I mentioned it earlier. My earliest award, and again, God given, was that scholarship award I got to the UK. Yeah, and from my interaction with many Malaysians, I also realized that I've been one of the very few, to get that award. So because of that, it has spurred me on, to, I think, to where I am, today.
Thank you, huh?
Yeah.
Tell us about your relationship and marriage with Miro. How do you get to know him?
Yes, Miro. Okay, it was very funny. Remember I mentioned that I was working in Shanghai for 3 years before coming to Qatar. So strangely enough, I felt like Shanghai brought us together. You might ask why. Well, when I was living in Shanghai, for an expatriate like myself, I don't speak Chinese, I don't read Chinese because I've never really learned Mandarin, right? So, we all try, when we are in China, you get around by using apps to help you with the translation, right? Chinese to English translation, and also to help you find new friends in a new country. Yeah, that's the way of like international teaching life. So anyway, but the interesting thing was I was in Qatar for about 3 years, and then one day Miro started writing to me, but it was from the apps that I had only known when I was in Shanghai. I never used it in Qatar. I didn't even know that it was working until he started messaging me. So I responded to his messages, and I thought that it was odd that someone in Shanghai would want to connect with me. I even thought it might be a scammer. Anyway, after a few exchanges, we decided to, he asked if we could meet up. Then I thought, definitely this was a scam, I thought at that time. Or that he might just not show up for the meeting, yeah? But anyway, he did show up, strangely, and he told me that he was new to Qatar, and basically, because he was new, he couldn't name me where he was staying, except that he could see a water tower nearby where he was living, and on the sign on the water tower said Asian Games in Doha. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, he's actually in Doha and not Shanghai. Anyway, we met over coffee and we went for a walk on the Corniche, which is Doha's version of a waterfront. Although he hardly said a word, and and all he could do was he just kept looking at me with his, I always call it his piercing green owl eyes. Yeah, that was our joke with each other. Now, Miro was, those of you who know him, Miro is because I still talk to him. You may think I'm a bit crazy, but I do. I talk to him and my late dad all the time. Miro was a loud, larger-than-life guy, sometimes scary, but he was actually a giant of a guy, yet very gentle and loving as a husband, partner, and best friend to me. He was also a devoted father and a devoted son, to his late mum. Now, he was very interesting. He never missed our birthdays and International Women's Day. I never knew this till I met him, actually. And he would also remember Valentine's Day and would shower us with bouquets of flowers and thoughtful gifts. Yeah, he was very lovely like that. He was also very supportive of my aspirations in my career. and also in my walk with God and our future. If a cheerleader can be a male, he was the main cheerleader in my life, you know. He would encourage me for any sort of interviews for promotion that I would go to. And if I wanted to improve myself, he would always be the one who would motivate me to do something greater than myself. Yeah, so for that, I will always miss him. Of course, among other things, he was my personal chef. He took care of my phone, the car, you know, the technology in my life. Yeah, so I am very lost most of the time nowadays. Now, on the pitch, Miro was also a very superb sportsman, very much like my late father, a skillful goalkeeper, and physically very, very strong. Miro actually was on his way to play professional football in Croatia before he met me. However, and unfortunately, because of a serious injury, that prevented him from going further in this football career. You know, something that he was very disappointed about. Yeah. Now, in terms of his occupation, his job, he was extremely committed to his job in facilities management in my school. And this trait of him was recognized when our school awarded him the first Shukran Award. Now, Shukran in Arabic means thank you. But apparently this award was created. Yeah, and strangely, when I look back now, maybe it was created for him. You know, he joined our school and they created this for him. Anyway, he was always a bit of an OCD type. He had that kind of OCD tendencies, a bit of a perfectionist and kiasu. And I know that he did a great job in our school. I know this through all the numerous people, you know, especially when he passed away, you know, people just came up to me and I knew all these things about him. I mean, of course, I knew it myself as a wife, yeah, but it means a lot when other people tell you about how great he was in facilities management. Now, you know, Miro, before he met me, he has led a pretty tough life. Some of you may know this already. He had military stints in Croatia, in Iraq and Afghanistan. And also he went through a lot in his personal life as well. You know, there were many early deaths, in his family. He lost his father at a very young age as well. He was 4, I think, at that time when he lost his dad. So he has never really had a real father figure as well, you know. So, but I'm just happy to say that I think this must have shaped his strength, because I felt that he was not just strong physically, but he was very strong emotionally as well, and always very cheerful, very resilient. You know, in fact, even in our married life, I always feel that even though we might go through some very dark times together, he was always the first one, you know, to emerge cheerful, you know, whereas I will be still stuck in my dumps, you know, much longer than him. So I'm glad that God brought him into my life, and I kind of learned some of these things from him, yeah. And because of his military experience also, you know, he has also shared with me that he's seen so many dead people actually in his own life. Yeah. So it must have shaped him quite differently from myself. You know, that's how I've kind of like seen another perspective of him. Yeah, of course, I'm very biased, but in my eyes, he was great. He was fantastic. But please don't get me wrong, we had our share of challenges in married life. As I've been single pretty long, you know, I only met him at the age of 39, and we finally got married at the age of 41. Our married life was definitely not without problems. Yeah, so it was very up and down, especially in the first 3 years. Because, you know, I'm used to a very independent life, used to making decisions by myself, and now I've had to, I've got to think of another person, got to compromise. And of course, I have to understand that he's also gone through his own things, right? Before we met. Yeah. Honestly, we had some really epic fights in our first 3 years. Yeah, only much later, a few years later, I'll be honest with you, I did share with my mom some of the things we went through, and she was really appalled to learn of some of the things I did to him as well, which she thought was really unacceptable. And actually, through that sharing, she made me apologize to him, which I did, and I'm so glad I did. Yeah. Right, married life, how did we negotiate our way? It was difficult, but I suppose we managed to try to make things better by being honest and making an effort to understand each other. Now, I think a lot of us, actually being honest is not an easy thing. Actually, it's easier not to be honest. And it's easier not to have a difficult conversation. But if you want things to be better, from our experience with each other, you kind of have to make yourself have that difficult and sometimes very ugly conversation, to basically tell one another what's making us happy or unhappy, and if we are very unhappy, how we can work together to improve on it. It's very difficult, but it's very crucial, very, very important. Come to think of it also, credit also goes to my late father and also my mom. As you know, we are very close to them. But I'm so happy also that, when both my brother and me were growing up with different people, whether or not they agreed with our choices, one thing about my late dad and my mom, they allowed us our own love choices, I must say. And I give it to them for that, and did their best not to interfere in our relationships. I think that helps a lot. Yeah. Now, even nowadays, and when Miro was around, he was always known to have protested when his friends, for example, the Westerners would crack a lot of jokes about their in-laws. Or maybe I should say outlaws. They always say something bad about your in-laws. But I would say that Miro would proudly declare, he said, "Not mine. I have the best parent-in-laws in the world." Yeah.
Extra question, why did he choose to contact you?
Yeah, actually, I've never asked him that. But since you asked this question, I do know that, you mean through the app, why he chose to contact me. I do know that, when we were getting serious at that time, when we were getting to know one another, and he realized that we were getting serious, he did say to me, I want to be very honest with you. When you are starting to write on the apps, he said, "Look, I was new in town. It was my way of just finding anybody, to be friends with." So it was just what he meant is he wasn't really looking at anything serious at that time. Yeah. But that was the conversation that we had before we became more serious.
Can you tell us more about Miro's strength?
Miro's strength? And also, yes, he's very strong physically and also emotionally, like I have said. He's seen many dark and bitter periods in his life as well. And what I liked about him was he always had a sense of humor as well, even though, we were talking about really terrible things. And when I think about Miro's strength, I have to bring up, that crisis that he went through. you know, that financial and legal crisis that he went through. Since 2016, right, Miro found himself trapped in a legal matter. Actually, what happened was, I don't really want to get anyone in trouble because we don't really blame anyone for it, but basically it was just a systemic failure where at that time in our school, there were many of our managers who were either like fired or they had to leave school suddenly because of like sudden resignation and so forth. So during that time, our HR manager also was had to leave suddenly. So because of this leaving, you know, like people coming and going, what happened was I'm just saying that someone up there had cancelled his work permit even before, because Miro was leaving the school, but he was actually but he haven't found a new job yet. So because of that, he was entangled in this thing because he had an existing loan, yeah. Well, all of us have existing loans actually when we are living overseas. But anyway, because of that, and because the whole paperwork was cancelled before he could get a new job, so officially he wasn't able to get a new job because the papers were cut off prematurely, you know, that sort of thing. So because of that, one thing led to another, so it also meant that he couldn't, eventually he couldn't keep up with the loan repayments, you know, and that's where it became eventually a financial struggle and burden, you know, over time. Yeah. Now this happened just before the Gulf countries had a boycott against Qatar. So, you know, believe me, myself and Miro, for a good 2 years, we sought the advice, you know, of all the highest authorities of Qatar. Actually, they were very good. You know, they grant us an audience. They would listen to our issue, but our point was we wanted to resolve it so that Miro could be legal. You know, and then we could continue life without any fear, basically, in Qatar. But because of all these things that were happening, most of the authorities were saying to us they want to help us, but they don't even know. They didn't know the way how to help. And I suppose they had like more priorities on hand, you know, their political situation. So his issue, they felt, you know, sometimes the police would even laugh at us. They would say, oh, if this happened to you, Miro, why didn't you run away? Why are you staying in Qatar? Just run away so you don't have to pay it back. But Miro and I would say, no, we want to do things right, you know, because even if we ran away from this problem, this problem will probably catch up with us, you know, because we're going against the law, basically. Yeah, so there was no way forward. Yeah, however, God was always with us, with him. So even in that sort of non-legal state, right, Miro found work and support from like our connections and our friends, you know, in Qatar. So actually he was working, yeah, right to the end, you know. And going back to his strength as well. Again, I also have like a few colleagues who would come up to me and say, Phil, oh my goodness, and these are my male colleagues. They would say to me, oh my goodness, the Miro is like one of a kind. You know, if any of us were in his position, I wouldn't be here. Like even one of my friends even said to me, you know, Phil, I'll take my own life. I'll be honest with you. So I take my hats off to Miro and how he can go through all this, you know, relatively cheerfully, you know, and relatively without depression. I also remembered that one of my new colleagues, because I was like a buddy to her. You know, we have a buddy system where when new teachers come, we kind of, you know, they shadow us. That means we take care of them, but we basically show them the ropes, you know, in a strange country like Qatar, and also to show them the culture of the place and how they should be teaching well, you know. But I remember like this colleague also she had some mental health issues, and she was always very honest with us about it. She would share very openly with us, and she looks a lot like Miro's daughter, actually. So that's why we kind of took her under our wings. So we always laugh and say that she's our Irish goddaughter, you know. But anyway, even, you know, when she was, sometimes when she could be very down, and she would also, you know, talk about taking her life. You know, she's talked to us quite a bit about that in the past. Miro, facing because he was still in that struggle, you know, Miro would actually, you know him, he's very assertive. He would actually just say to her, look, please, I won't mention her name, please snap out of it. He said, listen, you are not in my position. So he was like saying to her, look, if you were in my position, you have a right to think like that. But you have got, I still remember he was saying to this, you've got so much going for you. This is our young colleague, you know. She's still around. She's a beautiful girl, you know, very good teacher in the prime of her life. And he said, and you are talking about this kind of topics. You've got so much to live for, and so many people are looking up to you, you know, to continue your life. He said, no, don't talk like that, because only if you are in my position, you have the right to talk like that. And he says, and I'm in this position, but I'm not talking like that. You know, I'm not talking about taking my own life. Yeah. Yeah, that was his strength, you know.
So how do you solve the financial problem?
Yeah, so that financial problem, you know, we were praying for a good 7 years. A few of you will know that we have sought your prayers, you know, for us to free Miro from these shackles. Yeah. However, it was very frustrating. Those 7 years were very frustrating. I'm not saying that it has been easy and breezy. It was far from it. However, only in the middle of 2023, and this was after COVID, right? We've all gone through COVID as well. Only in the middle of 2023, suddenly a friend of Miro's, who we will call the angel, because he doesn't want to be known, decided that he would pay for all the financial costs to free Miro from his trap of the past 7 years. Now, when he was talking to Miro, their understanding was that Miro would return the payment in his own time once everything was settled. This was our mighty miracle answered after 7 years. But you can imagine what we went through in that 7 years. And up to now, we cannot and still do not believe how or why this angel would want to help us this way. For sure, God and all our prayers must have touched this angel. So by October 2023, Miro was a legal eagle, and we booked our family reunion trip to Germany, where our daughter and her husband are working. And this was to be Miro's first travel out of the country in 7 years.
Okay, say again. By October, what can you say again?
By October 2023, Miro was a legal eagle. Basically it means that he's legal. His status was legal.
Can you say again? He was legally free back then.
Okay.
Can you say again?
So by October 2023, Miro was legally free. Yeah, and then we booked our family reunion trip to Germany, where our daughter and her husband are working. This was to be Miro's first trip out of the country in 7 years. Praise God. Hallelujah. That was our miracle after 7 years.
Did the friend ask for repayment? Can you explain that?
Yeah. No, so you know, in the 3 days before Miro's passing, when I got the prognosis from the doctor that Miro would not wake up from his coma, of course, very heavy in my heart and mind was the angel, right? Because he's just given us that miracle, less than 6 months ago. So of course, in my mind, I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, Miro's going. Yeah, how are we going to repay this, obviously? Anyway, because of this, I called him. He was working offshore, I remember that night. Then I shared with him the very bad news about Miro. Then he just said to me, listen, I'm coming home tomorrow, the next day. So he says, if you go into the hospital, I'm coming with you, and let's go and see the doctor together so that, we can hear what the doctor has to say. So that's what we did. We went to the hospital together to visit Miro, and then the doctor repeated the same horrible news about Miro to him as well. Yeah, and after leaving ICU, we went downstairs for coffee. Yeah, so obviously I wanted to talk to him about it. So I just gathered the courage, and I just started by saying, regardless of whatever happens to Miro, I want to let you know that I will endeavor to return the payment. But I'll be very honest with you, I don't know how I'm going to do it. But whatever it is, I will have to think about some kind of an installment, or something. But anyway, he cut me. I didn't even finish my sentences. And basically, he just said to me, this matter is between myself and Miro, who's my friend. It's got nothing to do with you. Yeah. So the short answer is no, he did not ask for a repayment. Yeah.
Earlier on, it was a loan or just a free support. Before Miro, when he when he gave to Miro, was it a loan or with what condition? Or it was not specified.
Yeah, when he gave the money to Miro, Miro and myself saw it as a loan. I don't know what he saw it as, but for him, he's giving us the money. But of course, the agreement that it was that Miro will repay it in his own time. Yeah, like there was no pressure on him returning it. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us about Miro's demise?
Yeah. So, Miro and myself started with the flu sometime in December 2023, which is normal really for the end of a school year, especially in such a great big school like ours. However, Miro's sickness got worse and turned into a terrible cough by January 2024. Now, from the X-ray result, he had a shadow on his left lung, and our doctor said he probably had a severe infection, but was not able to tell whether it was viral, bacterial, or something else. Anyway, he urged us to admit Miro to hospital, which we did. Upon his admission to hospital, they suspected TB and they ran numerous tests, but these were negative. Then something like 3 days into his hospital admission, Miro suffered a medical episode when he coughed up blood and stopped breathing for 37 minutes before he was revived and put on a ventilator. Basically, he never woke up from his collapse till he slipped away in front of me, his daughter, and our son-in-law on February the 15th. We decided against a post-mortem as we felt that it would not make a difference, as that's myself and our daughter, accepted this as God's will, because we've seen the evidence in For example, Josiah's vision, and also, Nicolina herself was very convicted that her father appeared to her and told her, vividly that he was going, and that we should be happy for him actually because he's free. So we believe that Miro was saved, and he's home with our Lord now.
What was Josiah's vision?
Yeah. Now, Pastor called a prayer meeting. A prayer meeting for Miro. This was like February the 14th night, I think. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Yeah, which I also attended online. But I still remember, when I was attending it, I did feel quite hollow. I could hear all the prayers, but I felt very hollow deep inside. I don't really know what it meant. But by that night, I remember, I think my mom shared with me Josiah's vision, and the vision was apparently during that prayer meeting that afternoon, while they were all praying, Josiah could see that Miro's, not his physical body, but his spiritual body was being embraced by Jesus Christ, if I remember the details correctly. Jesus Christ was embracing him. Yeah. So that vision brought deep comfort to me. I'll be honest with you, the night before when I heard this from my mom, it brought me deep comfort, but I didn't read it as a sign that Miro was going to be gone, I still had hope and faith, But the point I'm trying to make is after his passing, when I look back to that vision of Josiah's, and also by what Nicolina was telling me about her father appearing to her, then it all made sense. I really felt that it was God's confirmation, if you like, about Miro's salvation.
Tell us about your struggles and pains during his sickness and his demise.
Yes, when Miro was very sick, of course, I was very worried. There was a lot of fear because it could get very bad one day. Like he had he was constantly exhausted, which is so unlike him. And he needed his sleep, which is again so unlike him. I'm the one who loves my sleep, but he doesn't need as much sleep as me. So all these signs were very worrying. But all through it all, he was always quite positive, and he would be quite cheerful, even though maybe he was in pain, but he never really showed it to me. Yeah, so because of that, part of what I went through during his sickness was, I prayed, and because we believe in our Lord's will and our Lord's grace, I really believed that he would be healed as well. And I had tremendous faith actually throughout his sickness. And if anything, I remembered, like, even though it was getting quite bad, we kept our routines very well. When I say very well, we kept to our routines. We also met friends a lot. We continued with our life as if like there was no sick person at home. So because of that, I felt like my faith was so strong. It was unwavering despite my worries and fears. Yeah. But again, upon his admission to hospital, when all these, actually when I think about it, all these sudden things happened to him in a space of a very short time. I think he was in total only 9 days in hospital, but all these, the first medical episode happened like 3 days into the hospital stay. So many things happened. So of course I was shocked for most of it. And but my way of dealing with it was I kind of quite quickly I set up a prayer routine. I alerted my mom, our family, and the church at home. So I know that people were praying for us already. I also sought the help of one of my Christian colleagues, and she was praying with me, day and night, really, for Miro. Yeah, and I was praying for him in hospital and also when I came home, and I just set up a daily routine. That was my way of not wallowing in my fear. Yeah, but my fear was certainly there, if you understand what I mean. But still, and I also want to say that many of our Christian friends who were with us and praying with us and interceding for us also prophesied to me that everything would be well. And so when they prophesied to me that everything would be well, I believed that he would survive this. Yeah. And not just our Christian friends, all our even non-Christian friends. Yeah, so imagine the shock when I had to break the news to everybody.
What was the reaction when he passed away?
Sorry, Pastor?
What was the reaction when he passed away?
Yeah. As I said, he passed away in front of the three of us. You see, what happened was the kids have come to be with me, so we were visiting him in ICU. Now, before he passed, as we entered the room, this was kind of like we were just going to see him one more time before we would leave for the night, When we entered the room, I could see suddenly, the numbers dropping on the monitor, steadily dropping, and that's when I could feel my heart just... I could feel that my heart was collapsing. Yeah, because, during my late father, at his deathbed as well, Miro is the one, because of his military experience and all that, he knows how to read all these monitor, like heartbeats and, oxygen levels and things like that. So I knew when I saw those numbers dropping, this was the end, But as I said to you, I had tremendous faith. So when I saw that happening, I was in a panic. Yeah. And the numbers drop until you get that what they call the flatliner, But Miro was already unconscious, so there was no change in him. He looked peaceful. So anyway, at that moment, it's very unbelievable. But I could feel fury, because I had faith. That's I don't know, that feelings of faith. I don't know whether you can call it that. Turned into fury. My first instinct was I had a go at the nurse on duty and basically telling him that they have done nothing in that 9 days, to help Miro. When I say they've done nothing, I think what I meant is, the doctors were also like baffled about Miro's case. They, up to the time he went, they couldn't tell me what was wrong with him, except that it was some kind of infection. Yeah, but obviously he must have died from that lack of oxygen for so long, right? I know that medically speaking, that would be the reason. Yeah, but anyway, when I was in my fury and I had a go at the nurse, that's when Nicolina, our daughter, stopped me, and she was quite adamant, She said to me, please don't be upset. because I didn't tell you before, but she said, my dad appeared to me, that night when you told us that the doctor said he would never wake up. So I knew already in my heart he was gone, because he told me he would be going, but he's happy and free, and that we should let him go, freely. We should let him go in peace, and we should be happy for him. I was in awe by what Nicolina said, because I suppose Miro's family, they are not particularly committed Christians. They are Catholics, and of course they know God, but they probably don't see God the way some of us do. So for her to have come up with that vision, like that brought great peace, at this worst time in our life. Yeah.
So when you received Joseph's vision, it had not dawned on you that it was a clue that he might pass away. You thought that he might come back to life. Huh?
Sorry, Pastor, can you repeat?
When you received Josiah's vision, it had not dawned on you that he might pass away. You thought that he might come back to life. Huh?
Yes, Pastor, I thought he might come back to life because, as you know, we've also been praying for his salvation. And then, to be honest with you, Pastor, we have had some breakthroughs, he's quite resistant. He's been quite resistant to me praying for him. But, even in those times when I attended the Friday prayer meeting with you, Pastor, Miro would actually be attending it with me. He's just there listening to everything that we are doing, So I know that whatever prayers we've prayed were in the progress of being answered. Does that make sense? So when I first heard about Josiah's vision, my understanding of it was, oh yes, Miro has been saved by our Lord Jesus. But I didn't think of it in the sense of he will die and leave me. Because obviously my prayer was, I want him to be healed from whatever it was he was going through, and to be a Christian, but on earth with me. Yeah.
Okay. Number 7, did the Lord say anything to you during that process? Or you answered already?
During the vision, the process of the vision.
The process of his passing away.
Yeah. The Lord has said many things. Yeah, actually it's quite a complex of things. Yeah, I cannot tell you everything, but but I think something that was quite significant for me was, something like 6 months after Miro's passing, I've been struggling obviously with this question that I suppose would plague anybody who would have to suffer something so sudden and unexpected like this, like I have done. That question of why. I don't understand this. I don't understand this because I had faith that he would live, and my understanding was he would be saved, and he was. Yeah, but I didn't think that it would be him in heaven and not him on earth, I guess that was my earthly being, speaking, and that's what I expected as an earthly being. But anyway, back to my vision. 6 months after, I was on my return trip back to Qatar from my summer holidays in Kuching. But at that time, I was going through Singapore to catch my flight back to Doha. But anyway, it was Kuching to Singapore, en route from Kuching to Singapore. It was very bad weather, I remember, very stormy. The pilot had to, I think, circle about 5 to 6 times before making the landing, very bumpy at that time. But just while the plane was circling around, suddenly, very vividly, I just felt this warmth, and I realized that my late father was beside me. And then Miro as well, holding my hand. And I felt like as if my father was replying to me, that question of why, the whys I've been asking God. Yeah. And this is the message that I got, through my father appearing, but I believe it was a message from God, saying that, like God gave me, gave us this relationship or this life that we had. Although it was cut short, it was almost 13 years. And the point is, some people don't even have that long. Yeah, so I was comforted by that. And then the other thing is, if I put my hand on my heart, in those almost 13 years, we had a really glorious time together as husband and wife. I just thought it would be forever, of course. But the message was that because it was so good, yeah, God had to take him away from me. Yeah. Because I believe that God has lots in store for me, and actually whatever I go through now, before and now, before, during our life together and after his passing, is a testament that we really adored each other very, very much, and we have a very deep love for each other, and that hopefully other people will be inspired by our story.
So how did the Lord comfort you and help you to pick up your life again?
Yeah, God has been very awesome. Of course, as I said to you, I never knew this would happen to me. So He gave us support, in the form of our family, our daughter and her husband. Like when I look back, I didn't have to plan anything. They were just there. The next thing I knew was she's saying, we are coming to be with you in Qatar. I didn't ask for that. So I know that God has planted it in their heart, for them to be with me. And thank God they were with me because when they were there, they helped me with the embassy things, the hospital things, everything to do with to repatriate his body and the funeral as well, in Croatia. So Miro's family, my family, our friends were just at our, they were, upon hearing the news, they were at our doorstep, like at 1 a.m., that morning when they got the news from me. I mean, among other things, but yeah, our family and friends have been, the support and love has been so overwhelming. I could write a list, but there was so much that everybody did for us. Miro passed away on the 15th of February. That's something like about a week before my own birthday. So our very sweet friends, what they did was, incidentally, that was also the night where we would bring Miro's body out of the morgue from the hospital, and to put it in the ambulance that would take him to the airport, that would take him back, that would fly him back to Croatia. So because it was all happening on that night, so they planned a really lovely birthday treat for me at the Italian Job, which is Miro's favorite restaurant. Yeah, everything was so meaningful, that they all did it for me in our worst times. And and also the sending off at the hospital was very touching for us, because my very good friend Ellie Miles was also She brought her flute. Yeah. And then she played, Liverpool's anthem. Yeah, as we carried the casket to the ambulance that would take him to the flight to Croatia. Yeah, I mean, this is just one of the many things that our friends and families have done for us, and they just make sure that they were there for me, all the time. Yeah.
Has the Lord taught you anything about faith, life, and relationship?
Yes, definitely faith. Right, I'm just going to, sorry. Yes, faith. I think we can have faith because of our relationship with God, and I definitely did have faith in Miro's case. But ultimately, what I've learned is we have to submit it to God's will. It's not our will. Yeah, and that was the hardest part of my lesson. But as I said before, because of that vision or that message from God, it is God's will, because I have to carry on bringing glory to God's name, because He's gifted me, Miro, and this relationship in my life. Yeah. And I also believe that, when you love people a lot, you love people deeply, how we carry ourselves after is actually an honor to them, So I also want to honor Miro as well as my late father for, their inspiration in our lives. And hopefully God's glory can be revealed through us, and the way we live from now on. Yeah. Now, the other thing is death. I've always feared the idea of death, but my fear of death is more of, I just don't want loved ones to leave me behind, So, if it's the other way around, I think I accept it better, but I don't want my loved ones to leave me. So in a way, it's a bit selfish, I think, on my part, but I guess God taught me this lesson about death. Yeah, because it was one of my greatest fear. But I've learned that death is not to be feared, as our faith rests on our salvation as children of God. I'm assured of Miro's salvation in his kingdom, as we have been praying for him, and this is confirmed by the vision of Jesus embracing his spiritual body, as we saw in Josiah's vision, as well as in Nicolina, making it very clear to me that her father had told her that he's free, and he is so happy now in heaven. Yeah, and what I've really learned is that we need to pray for each and every relationship in our life so that we may discern what God wants for us. That's what I've learned from this.
Do we have any words for women who unexpectedly lost their spouses?
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say that from my experience. Of course, I cannot talk for every woman in the world who would lose a loved one suddenly, because what I've also learned through the death of Miro is I think death of anything or of anyone is a very unique experience, because your own life experience is very unique. No one person is the same. Yes, the only same thing is the death has happened, but your ups and downs are personal to you. So I just want to emphasize this is from my own experience. So hopefully you might get it as a wife as well. But I wouldn't say that you would definitely get it from my experience. I hope you understand what I mean. Yeah. But Anyway, what I would say is if you have loved and lost suddenly, and now you are grieving very badly, I just want to let you know that your grieving, your grieving is actually strangely or paradoxically a good thing, because it's the evidence of the deep love you have experienced and shared with this person. And as a tribute to your beloved husband, partner, and relationship, you should honor and the fantastic memories you've had together, so that your children, your grandchildren, your family, your friends, your connections, your community, and your future generations can see how the glorious work of God's hand has been in your life. Also, I would just say, when it's so sudden like this, you be in a state of confusion. You find it very hard to make decisions. Well, I did. It's just very little decisions as well. All I will say is, please seek God in these difficult times and ask Him to help you through. But I would also advise everybody, please keep physically active. Love and look after yourself first, okay? Before you look after others. Yeah. And always try to focus on the positive and, be nice to yourself, treat yourself, enjoy yourself. And the other thing is, now, sometimes the pain, can be so unbearable. So I would say, do keep a balance to being alone and with other people. From my experience, you need both. You need to be with other people, and you also need to be alone to face your thoughts and your feelings. I want to be very honest with you, because of the overwhelming support I got from our family and friends, I actually felt like at one point I was having a very active social life, compared to even when Miro was alive. Yeah, and I really needed time to be by myself, actually. Yeah, but I would also say, please don't be by yourself 24/7. Please be with others as well. And don't be afraid to share what you're going through. You don't have to give people details, but share it, because I also feel that your family and friends need to know that you are okay. So you need to give them that sort of feedback and acknowledgement as well. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Phyllida.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I will not frame it just purely Miro, your life.
Also, yeah.
Your life, teaching, then met Miro, and then his the good time with him, the pain of death, and how you overcome the grief. Can you give me pictures of your teaching days in Shanghai? Your
teaching days?
Yeah, some pictures of your time in Kaka teaching, and also his picture of Miro.
Yeah.
Two of you together, and then his burial in Croatia.
Also, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And then the farewell by the colleagues.
Also, right, yeah.
During his the simple birthday party before.
Yeah.
Then I'll just put together.
Okay, no problem. Does it take you long to edit?
I think I can use AI to translate the words. Then I'll be able to mark where.
Like that.
Where I'll be able to pick up those good, relevant ones.
So Joshua always does the physical editing.
I will tell him
where
to cut.
You tell him verbally, or you write?
No, I normally listen through first, then I identify where to include. I'll give him the time segment.
Yeah. So you write down notes.
I will cut then, from minute what to minute what.
Wow. Wow, quite detailed, huh? Quite tedious, I mean.
In a sense.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, editing's like that.
Sometimes you have to listen twice so that be able to.
Yeah.
Okay, now this one.
Or more, yeah.
Is it oversay or has it been repeated elsewhere?
Yeah.
So I find the thing for a while.
Yeah.
Now it'd be better go AI. We can translate to words first. I've not done it, I want to do it this time. They'll be able to identify.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, AI can, huh? Oh, very good.
AI can translate to words. This is what people particularly told me. I'll give this a try. Thanks a lot for giving that.
Yeah.
You send me the pictures. Shanghai Day.